friends, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another schedule reaction video. Your girl is finally on the line. Your girl finally got a real schedule, okay? So welcome back to another schedule reaction video once again. My name is Priscilla. If you're new here, I am a New York based flight attendant working with a major international US airline, and I do currently live in Accra, Ghana, and I do commute to work at New York. And in today's video, I will be sharing with you all my June schedule. This is what we got for June. So please take note that I have been a flight attendant for 3 years. However, I did take some time off, and based on the time off that I took, this pushed my pay anniversary back a few months. I think it pushed it back about 9 months. So my pay anniversary was March 13th. So 9 months from March 13th, I believe is going to be my new pay anniversary. I'm yet to validate that. I might probably share that in the next video. However, for pay calculation's sake, I just wanted to make that clear that even though I've been a flight attendant for 3 years, my pay is set at a 2-year pay because technically my pay anniversary has been pushed back a few months. So I hit my 3rd year March 13th. However, my actual pay anniversary date is going to be later this year, if not early 2027. Secondly, my hourly pay rate right now as a flight attendant, my flight attendant pay, my flight hourly pay for 2nd year is $41.65. Also, the schedule value for the month of June was set at 82 hours plus or minus 7 hours. I said this 1,000 times, but I'm gonna say it again. What that means is that although people work full-time in the US, full-time is typically 160 hours a month, which is 80 hours every 2 weeks, 40 hours a week. For us flight attendants, our full-time is a little different. The hours per schedule is based on the hours we spend on the aircraft flying, actually on the plane working. But in total, we spend more hours away from home compared to the amount of time we actually spend on the plane working. But I think as a result of that, our full-time is quite different, right? So every month it changes. It's based on operational needs. And for the month of June, the maximum you can potentially be scheduled for is 82 hours plus 7 hours, which is 89 hours. And the minimum you can be scheduled for as a full-time employee is 82 minus 7, which puts you at what, 75 hours, right? So that's like the maximum, 89 hours total maximum, and then 75 hours minimum. You can potentially bid for lesser hours. However, if you don't hold that request or that bid, what you will get would either be the minimum or the maximum, right? Or anything in between. So let's jump into what I bid for. The first things that I did was to waive 2 rules. So I waived my 3 days off every 9 days, every 9 calendar days. What that essentially means is that if I get scheduled for 9 days of work, I should get at least 3 days off, right? Right after that. It prevents the system from actually just scheduling me back to back on end, right? And then the other rule that I waived was the same day release to report. I waived that rule because I did not want too much space between when one trip ends and when one starts. Because I'm a commuter, I want to be in work. Once I'm out, I get my days off. Thirdly, I bid for a schedule value. So because I am a commuter and I live in Accra, Ghana, I'm hoping not to work too much, or as much as possible be able to clear my schedule. So since I'm too junior to get the good trips that people might want, I constantly bid for a low schedule value, which is 45 hours. I bid for 45 specifically because I want to be able to keep my benefits. So that's the reason why I bid for the 45 hours, but I didn't get, I don't always get it. I was doing this when I was based in Seattle. Once again, also I was previously based in Seattle. I just transferred over to New York. I'm hoping that I get it this time, but I guess we're gonna find out, right? The next thing that I bid for were my days off. I bid for my days off to be Friday to Monday, which means I did not want to be scheduled anything between Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I bid for carry out hours. What carry out or in hours means is that you get scheduled a trip at the tail end of the bid period. In this case, it was the tail end of the bid period was July 1st, because the bid period for June was June 2nd to July 1st. If you get scheduled a trip, let's say on the 1st of July or on the 30th of June, What that means is that part of that trip is going to bleed into the coming month. And in the moment when the schedules are being worked on for the month of June, those hours are added to your June schedule. So what that means is that although it will inflate the total amount of hours that you're getting in June, you will essentially end up having more days off in June, even though you've gotten more hours, because part of your hours has bled into the coming month. The other part is carrying hours. So sometimes people will pick up trips towards the beginning or the tail end of the month prior. So in this case, if assuming I got assigned a trip on the 30th or 1st of July, on the 30th of June or the 1st of July, whatever hours I carry into July will be carry-in hours at the time when July schedule is being worked on. However, while June schedule is being worked on, those hours will be counted as carry-out hours. But once we start the next bid period, which is going to be in July, then those hours will be considered carrying hours, which then would inflate your July hours as well, because it's going to create the illusion that you already have work to do. Not in this case, it would be real. It was in June that it created the illusion that you had all these hours for June, but in July you are already essentially pre-scheduled even before schedules are released, right? And sometimes those trips can go away depending on how the system works your schedule and how things work out for you. So it's honestly not guaranteed per se if you already had the trip there. But the good thing is that you can actually ask for these hours. So I say all that to say that I bid for carry out hours of 10 hours and above. The reason was because I wanted to have 10 hours be part of June but carry out into July, so that I don't get scheduled a lot in June, plus I won't get scheduled a lot in July because I'm already starting off with 10 hours, right? The other thing is I bid for the Accra layover. Of course I'm gonna bid for Accra. I live in Accra and I would love to be assigned trips that allows me to fly back home, spend my layover of like 24 hours, and then go back to the US. Like, I would love to work those trips. So I bid for it anyway, although I won't be able to hold it. If you guys don't know this, Accra goes very senior because of the credit, and I think the destination as well. So it's very high credit. It's usually between 20 to 21, 22 hours, right? So you make good money for your time. Plus the destination is great. The food is great. The people are great. So why not? Like, why are people coming here for that to December? There's gotta be a reason, right? The other thing is my reserve start dates. So once again, I avoided being assigned reserve between Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And then I avoided LaGuardia as well. Being New York based, we do work out of two airports, JFK and LaGuardia. In the moment when I was bidding for this, I did not want to work with LaGuardia because I did not want to fly out of LaGuardia because I wasn't familiar with it. And based on where my crash pad was going to be, I wasn't really sure how the transportation to and from that area would be. But I was more willing to work out of JFK because I commuted into JFK and I was hoping to be able to work once I got to base immediately. So I don't have to go to the crash pad, then I start work. But things have changed, but I will talk about that as we move forward with my experience being based in New York. The other thing is I avoided flight lead. I used to do this a lot when I was in Seattle. I don't hate working flight lead. I just want to be able to pick the trips that I work lead on. And knowing that I'm junior, I might not always get what I want. I would rather have the choice of what trips I can pick up and work lead on. So right out the gate, I just like to request for regular position trips. Also, we avoided the 717 aircraft. Notice that a lot of times also people might not want to pick trips with the 717 too. It's not a fan favorite. So yeah, that kind of like, you know, turns me off. The other thing was me bidding for high credit trips, right? So for 3-day trips, I bid that none of my 3-day trips be below 19 hours. And for my 2-day trips, I bid that none of them be below 15 and 59 hours. 15 hours and 59 minutes. And for 1-day trips, I avoided all 1-day trips. Also, as usual, if you've been here, if you're an OG, if you've always been a member of this channel, you know that after working as a flight attendant for like 6 months in, I started to avoid Atlanta because of whatever was going on. And then also I avoided a certain report time. I did not want to have any report time between midnight to 2 p.m. because I commuted in. The only reason why I did not push that number higher because I wanted to be able to get Accra if I could hold it magically for whatever the reason was. I wanted to be able to leave room for that. But yeah, moving forward, God knows what I would do. The last thing, that I avoided working 4 flights per day because I can't. Like, even on the 3rd flight, I'm done. The only reason why I left 3 out of this is because I actually realized that a lot of the high credit trips tend to have like one day where you're working 3 flights a day, and I can manage 3 flights, but by the 3rd flight, I'm done. I'm tapping out. Like, anything else after that, you're gonna get the bad side of me. And it's like, there's a lot of stress that goes into the shop, and the altitude, takeoff, landing, boarding, all that, it's a lot. And I choose peace of mind, and I'm in my soft life era right now. Okay, so let's talk about what bids were granted. So both rules were active, they weren't denied or anything. The schedule value that I asked for 45 hours. That was not granted. The days off that I wanted, I asked that I should be given days off from Friday to Monday, and that was not granted. The other thing was the carry-out hours. I barely got it, so close but not close enough. It wasn't granted. I bid for layovers in Accra. I did not get that as well. I bid to avoid my reserve being scheduled Friday to Monday. That was granted because, as you can see, my reserves were scheduled between Tuesdays to Thursdays only. And then avoiding LaGuardia, yes, none of the trips that I had me flying out of LaGuardia Airport in New York. And the other thing was flight lead. That was granted as well. None of the trips had me in lead position. With regards to avoiding the Boeing 717 aircraft, also, that was granted because none of my flights or the aircraft that I was going to work on these trips was the Boeing 717. When it came to the trips that I asked for, I asked that the 3-day trips not be below 19 hours, right? It should all be greater than 19 hours. That was denied twice because out of the 3 trips that I was assigned, only 1 was over 19 hours. The rest were all 16 hours and below. And then avoiding 2 days, that was granted because technically I wasn't assigned any 2-day trips to begin with. Avoiding all 1-day trips, that was assigned as well because I wasn't assigned any 1-day trips. Avoiding Atlanta, guys, that was granted. None of my trips had me in Atlanta at all. And then the report time, that was denied once. One of the trips, the one on the 28th, for example, had me reporting at 10 a.m. when my bid was to avoid any trips that started from midnight to 2 p.m. So that was denied once due to that 3-day trip. And then lastly, avoiding 4 legs or 4 flights per day, that was granted. None of the rotations or the trips that I had me working on any day more than 3 flights a day. It was all between 1, 2, and 3. Let's talk about the hours. The first reserve that I got assigned was between 2nd June to 4th June. That was worth 14 hours and 15 minutes. And then the trip that I have assigned on the 9th to the 11th, that was worth 16 hours and 26 minutes. The second trip that I got assigned on the 16th to the 18th was worth 16 hours and 19 minutes. And obviously the reserve is once again worth 14 hours and 15 minutes. And then the last trip that I got assigned on the 28th to the 30th of June, the credit on that trip was 19 hours and 1 minute. You can see the trips I got had really low credit, which obviously is never a fun favorite, but I really appreciated the report time of those trips because the report time for the trips on the 9th and the 16th were from, I think, after 6 p.m., which was good for me as a commuter. Both reserves, the one on the 2nd and the one on the 23rd, totals up to $1,187.04. I will leave the individual amounts for each block for you, but the total value of my reserve, which is the 83 that you see there, or the reserve you see there, is worth $1,187.04. What reserve pay means is that that's guaranteed pay. So in a sense, you have some sort of guaranteed pay for the month compared to somebody who is senior enough to not get assigned reserve. If they don't work their trips, they're not getting paid. But if you get assigned reserve, whether you get used or not, it's like being on call 247 essentially, or 246 in this case because it's 6 days. But if you get assigned a trip and it's higher, you get that higher pay. If the trip has lower credit, you just get the reserved amount, which is the guaranteed amount of the 14 hours and 15 minutes for that 3-day block, which becomes a total of 28 hours and 30 minutes for the 6-day block. The trip on the 9th is worth $857.98. The trip on the 16th is worth $852.29. And lastly, the 3-day trip that I have on the 28th is worth $993.35. All these rotation income or amounts do not include our boarding pay, because boarding pay is based on the amount of flights that you work. So if you end up working 5 flights, then you get 5 times whatever your premium boarding pay is. The reason why it's not included right away is because flights are subject to cancel. Like the last trip I worked, for example, one flight got canceled. So if I was counting on that boarding pay, it's gone. So it's not guaranteed in a way, right? If the flight gets canceled, you don't get paid because you don't board the flight. So essentially where we're sitting at right now is that once schedules were released on the 18th of May, what I received in June, the total amount of hours that I was scheduled was 80 hours and 16 minutes. Remember, I bid for minimum schedule value, which was what? 45 hours, but the initial schedule value set for the month of June was 82 plus or minus 7 hours, which means I got almost right at the minimum, right, of whatever schedule value was going to be, but I didn't get my request, which was 45 hours. And the total amount of income I was going to make for those hours, for working 80 hours and 16 minutes, will be $3,890.66, which means I'm a few dollars away from making $4,000 for working just 80 hours and 16 minutes. Let that sink in, okay? We're talking about $3,890.66 for working for 80 hours, not full time, not 160 hours, but 80 hours, right? And the amount of days off that I would have had would be 15 days. So essentially I would be working 15 days. So it's an even split. I'll be on duty for 15 days and I would get 15 days off, and I will be making, potentially projected to make $3,890.66. And this will, well, I think this amount would get, if not go beyond $4,000, because I haven't included boarding pay. So let's say my boarding pay is at $15 per boarding, right? And in total I work what, 20, 30, 40 flights that month. That's 40 times the $15, which will put this amount well over $4,000. So essentially, if I work exactly what I've been scheduled, I will be making over $4,000 that month, and I'm not even working 100 hours. It's just the bare minimum. This is me just sticking to the bare minimum. I'm not picking up extra trips. I'm not even going to be assigned a trip on my 8 days. Assuming I'm not even assigned any trip on my 8 days, this is the amount I'll be making. If you get assigned a trip on your reserve and it's 20 hours for a 3-day trip, that's well over whatever you were going to make for that day if you did not get assigned anything at all. So let that sink in. And the reason why sometimes, as bad as the pay might be once you start this job, it gets better eventually. You get what I'm saying? So I think this job is set up such that you have to put in the work and the time. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and be delusional and think or feel that that our pay is great and it's good where it is. No, because technically if you work a 3-day trip, you are away more than 40 hours, more than 50 hours sometimes, depending on when you start and when you get released. Sometimes you're away for 65 hours, but you're not getting paid 65 hours times your 4165. You're getting paid the 4165 that I'm making as a third-year flight attendant who has a different pay anniversary date, is based on the time I spent on the aircraft itself. So if you have a 3-hour sit, if you have delay, like all those things are not factored in, okay? So they are factored into a different pay scale, which is much lower than your hourly pay. One thing I've realized, or my takeaway from getting my June schedule, is that with regards to bidding for business days, the reason why I bid for weekday trips or reserve was because in Seattle it was easier to swap out of them because we had a lot of people that did not want to work weekends, right? However, in New York, it's proven that honestly it doesn't even matter whether I had a weekend trip or a weekday trip. It doesn't really matter if you look at the bigger picture. So with the way things are set up now, the goal is to be able to move things forward. So essentially moving the trip on the 9th to the 5th, for example, and then also moving the trip on the 23rd to the 19th, for example, so that I only have to commute in twice, and then I'll save the 28th trip for whatever happens in July. So essentially I would have commuted in twice. I'm not going to pick up any extra trips or anything. The only issue with that is that getting out of your reserve is very hard. Being able to swap your reserve for trips is hard out of New York. Not necessarily because you can't get anybody to swap with this, because most of the time people want to give you their entire world just for one set of reserve, which puts me in a tight situation because I'm a commuter who right now cannot work more hours. But right now I'm in a position where I'm trying to ease myself in, so I can't afford to work back to back right now. I have other responsibilities that do take my time, right? So I can't do that right now. So I'm gonna aim to commute in twice, not pick up anything extra aside from my reserve and whatever trips I get assigned. The second thing is, moving forward for July, I'm going to waive all my rules. I plan on waiving all the rules except for the 10 days off rule. And then I plan on bidding the commuter bid of 1. The downside of being assigned trips over the weekend is that 15 minutes after our schedules get released, the weekends are typically capped out, right? So it's hard to swap out of them onto the weekdays compared to being able to swap out of a weekday trip onto the weekends. So that's why I'm torn, because if I want to focus on the weekdays, then my seniority essentially will not give me good trips over the weekdays. However, my seniority over the weekend might give me high credit trips. So I have to choose risking not being able to swap out of trips with the system, because the system is going to be capped out over the weekend if I'm not able to beat it when schedules get released, or risk bidding for weekday trips and it being easier to swap with the system to a weekend trip. But then again, after all is said and done, once schedules get released, the trips on the board on the system is usually not good trips anyway. So it's like, why don't I just bid for the report and the release time that I want on the weekends, so I get at least something that I actually want, right? That I can potentially sacrifice and work if it comes to it, right? So that's where we are with that. And the main reason why I was trying to bid for weekdays so that I'll be able to move things around is that I want to be able to work. I was planning on actually working weekly. So I'm going to work a 3-day, like how my schedule is set up. I would essentially commute in on the 1st, work and essentially leave on the 4th, arrive in Ghana on the 5th, and spend the 6th and the 7th home. But that did not make any sense ultimately, because it means I'm commuting and I'm sitting on a plane for like 20 hours just to go work for 3 days and come back. And if I look at how much I'm going to make per a 3-day trip based on the hours that I have for those trips, my commuting fee will take a chunk of that money, if not almost 50%, right, per trip. So essentially I'm just working just to go to work, essentially, which doesn't make any sense. So it makes more sense, or it is in my best interest, to commute in at this point twice, simply because I want to be home as much as possible, so that it sets my schedule up such that I report in only once a month. Then I will in turn break it up to commute in twice a month. And my goal also is to force the system to give me carryout hours to see if it's going to work in my favor. So one thing that I did was to get carryout hours was that I actually picked up a trip on the 1st, so that right now I have like about 10 hours going into July already. So let's say the system wants to schedule me 80 hours like they did in June. I already have 10 hours, so all they can give me are 70 hours, right? Reserve will take about 30 hours. So then I have 40 hours left, which can be 2 20-hour credit 3-day trips. So you get what I'm. The last thing that I plan on doing is bidding for the first half of the month off. I was debating this, whether I should have it push my trips forward so that I have the back end off, or to push it back and then see if I can move things up by swapping with the system or other flight attendants. Because I do prefer to work early on than later on, me having my trips at the end towards the second half of the month, I feel should or might give me an advantage, in the sense that people will be more willing to get out of trips that they have in the moment to pick up trips that they can deal with later. So that's what I'm banking on. So my goal is that once schedules are released or whatever, if I can swap, if my credits are bad, I'll probably just aim at swapping into high credit trips. That would move me forward. Or I'll just keep my schedule as it is, commute in the day that I want to at the beginning of the month. Once I get to base, I see if I can stop swapping trips and moving it forward, right? So that I can work as much as I can while I'm there and then restructure my schedule then. But I guess I won't know until July shows up and July's schedule shows up, and then we see what happens. But so far, friends, your girl is back on the line. This is what I got assigned for the month of June. We got 2 sets of reserve, which is 6 days of reserve, and 3 set of 3-day trips. So let me know what your thoughts are with my schedule in the comment section below. In New York though, I do have partial weekends off. So as you can see, I had majority of my weekends off except for the Sunday at the end of the month. So this is pretty good for somebody who wants to be home during the weekends. But one thing that became apparent also lastly, before I let you guys go, because this video is honestly too long, is that if I release my weekends, I might be able to hold more higher trips over the weekends. But it is what it is. I guess we win some, we lose some. But based on this schedule, like I said, I'm working 15 days and I'm making about $3,900 for the month for working 80 hours over 15 days. So here we are. Share your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll definitely see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.